Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. We are here the morning of her first procedure. We're fixing to go across the Cide Bridge, and we actually made it a few minutes early, so we should have time to get over and get settled before her actual appointment time. But we're gonna walk across the Cide Bridge, get checked in, and we'll give you an update whenever things get started.
Already, finally got the IV in, which is like my most nerve-wracking part, so.
How'd it go?
Hurt, but it was fine.
First hit?
First hit, so yeah, that's all I can ask for on that. And got my nausea patch behind my ears, so.
Now we're just waiting for the doctor to wake up and make it to work.
Yeah.
Okay, so we finally made it to a room. I'm trying not to talk too loud because the walls are kind of thin because we could hear some people next door. But we finally got up to a room after almost 10 hours of waiting and recovery. Evidently they were packed full and they just didn't have a room available. So we sat down there in a little curtained off room for, like I said, about 10 hours. Finally got up here, a few little hiccups along the way. She's got the monitor placed. Everything went really well with that. Still don't know anything because the pressure was good when they put it in. And so we're just going to have to wait and see. We thought the neurologist would come today and see her, but maybe since it was so late for us getting in the room, she's not going to come until tomorrow now. They've got her all hooked up, getting monitored so they can see. They're going to do a period tonight from 10 to 6 where she has to lay flat the whole night, and they can get a better picture that way. Not really sure how all this works. I just know that she's got a lot of wires on her, and she's actually doing pretty good. She's been in minimal pain since it happened. Said it stings a little bit right where the little thing is. But yeah, other than that, she's been doing really well. Super happy with them. Her lunch got lost between here and the cafeteria somewhere. But they actually have a gluten-free menu. And they are very particular about it because she also has a lactose thing on her thing. She tried to order some pudding, and they were like, nope, that's not on your diet. So they are super careful and super strict here. And what's really cool is about once we got to the room, they actually have a tablet where she can go through and order the stuff, and it only gives her the stuff that she's allowed to have on it. She can pick her menu and stuff, and then they'll deliver it to her. That is really neat, and I really like. And the cafeteria options they have here is really nice. So they've got a bunch of different little restaurants down there in the cafeteria area. I got a pizza today, and it was like $10 for like, I don't know, it's probably like a 12 or 14 inch pizza. It's like a whole pizza, and I just couldn't believe it because I had lots of toppings on it. I couldn't even eat it all. But we're just kind of waiting out here. They're fixing to be doing shift change, so I'm going to see who her nightly nurses are, and she's got supper on the way, and we're just waiting on that. But just want to give a quick little update and show you how well she's doing, and things are going really well. Just trying to wait and figure out what's going on so we know the next step. But we'll bring you along with us. Well, I broke her out, and we have a lot of updates along the journey. Tried to do some before, but some things changed, so we're having to retell this story just a little bit.
Yeah.
So on that day, when we did the last update, it was right at shift change. The day shift couldn't get the computer that was supposed to monitor all this logged on. They didn't know the password, so they left it for the night shift. The night shift tried initially, couldn't figure it out, so then they reached out to the neurologist to try to find out, and I guess they got a hold of somebody later that night.
Yeah.
And this is after I had left because she was supposed to be not disturbed from 10 to 6, and so I had stepped out at that time, and they got everything supposedly logged in and all that, and monitored her throughout the night. Supposedly everything was good.
Yep.
I get there early the next morning, shortly after she was able to get up.
Yes, so that next morning, I woke up, got up. I had to obviously call to have somebody come help me to the restroom and everything, because there's 50,000 cords just attached to 2 different machines. And after about the second or third time, once shift change had happened to the day shift, one of the nurses was like, I can make this easier for you. And she got me a portable telemetry pack that could stick in the pocket of my gown, pajamas, whatever. And that helped a lot because that meant I was only connected to 2 other machines at that point. Because I guess it was, 3 before. And so that helped. But then I was like, we just kept waiting and waiting and waiting. Because I was like, surely, since the neurologist didn't come up the day of surgery, she'll be in this morning.
Yeah.
Well, we just kept waiting and nobody showed up. I had breakfast. I ordered my lunch, which is amazing that I can do it on my phone from the app. It's fantastic. I don't have to worry about, trying to get somebody to order it for me or anything like that. But I finally asked the nurse, I was like, hey, what time does she usually round? And they were like, usually she sees patients in an office and then she goes over to the other campus and then she'll come here late. And it's usually like late in the evening or overnight. And I'm like, great. So, but they had no updates. They hadn't heard from her, didn't know anything. They kind of had a little more of a clue about the machine than the nighttime folks had, which they were really nice and really trying their best, but I guess they hadn't had an ICP monitor for a little bit, so they were a little rusty.
And most of the time it's done in the daytime because they're usually not getting there right at shift change to a room because you were really late that day. Yeah, so had lunch, which their food is really good there. It really is. I will say that because I've had hospital food that's just meh, and it's actually good. It's kind of the same thing across the gluten-free menu. It's fairly bland, but I'm actually okay with that after having, anesthesia and tend to have nausea and all that. A little after lunch, my doctor had gotten finished with his, he had a Chiari surgery that morning and he'd gotten done. So he came on up and he was like, well, just shortly before 3.
Yeah. Yeah. He was like, well, how are you? And I was like, I'm doing okay. I hadn't really had to have, I'd had Tylenol once. Really been doing okay, just hanging out. And he was like, I don't know anything more than I did. He's like, I haven't talked to her, don't know anything. And we were in there just talking to him about different things. And he's like, it may be tomorrow before you get to go. Because whenever I'd first gotten up there, he was like, yeah, you might get to go home that day. Well, he was like, probably it's not going to be today. And I was like, well, it's okay. And then he got a text on his phone. He's like, oh, well, she's on her way over.
Yeah.
Well, on her way over.
The other campus is like a 20-minute drive. So we're thinking, okay, maybe a half hour to an hour.
Yeah. No, it was like
2.5 hours later.
Yeah.
She showed up.
Yeah.
So I guess something happened in between.
Yeah. She came in and she started looking at stuff and she's like, what program is this that they're running? And I was like, I don't know. I just know it took them a long time to set up and they were having trouble. And she's like, this is not even the right one. She's like, we can pull the data from it. She's like, it's just a lot harder to get where I need to get from here. Yeah,
because her other stuff is preset for the parameters to monitor and get what she needs. And that was another thing is they initially told us that, she's going to be watching these numbers throughout the night and all that. And the fact that she didn't even know they were in the wrong program lets me know she wasn't checking anything before.
No. So she came up and, she was talking to us after she looked at the stuff. She was kind of a little short with like her answers and like I'd say something and it almost like cut me off whenever I'd say stuff. And I was like, okay, I'm not sure if I'm liking this, but this is the specialist. So I tried to just keep my mouth shut. And then, she was having me do some positional testing, so I had to like lay flat. She checked it my pressure when she raised me certain amounts. And then she had me sit on the edge of the bed. Well, I sit up on the edge of the bed and she's like, okay, well just stay here. And she's like, I'll be right back. Well, sat there some more. And
because what it was is they just had her in a gown and she's going to be walking down the hall, so she told her to change into some clothes and just sit on the edge of the bed. She'd be right back. And so we're assuming like be right back is as soon as you're changed, she's good to go.
Yeah. No, it was like 45 minutes?
No, it was over an hour when she finally came back.
Yeah. I was really getting irritated at this point. Like
we both were.
Yeah. And my heart rate's kind of going crazy. I'm trying to keep it calm, but I'm really getting angry and irritated. And I'm like, he's like, calm down, try to keep calm, because he could see the fluctuations. Like my heart rate would spike, and so my pressure would go crazy.
I'm watching all these numbers, and it's like a roller coaster, and I'm just like, you'll never get out of here if you don't calm down. Now, don't get me wrong, I was upset too, because my thing is, they said she rounds in the evening. We were there before she even showed up on that evening, the previous evening. So why did she not come by, at least make sure the machine was hooked up correctly, or something like that, or check on her computer on the other side to make sure it was? And so it's just, we're already a little annoyed that we're here for this testing and she didn't even bother to come by until 6 o'clock the next day. Well, 5:30 the next day.
Yeah. And then she finally came back in the room, and she was like, oh, good, you're still sitting up. She's like, you had to sit up for, what was it, 30 minutes?
30 minutes.
And I was like, good to know. That would have been really good information to know before, so that I didn't just get irritated thinking that she's just left me here.
Yeah, because like I looked out in the hall and everything, and like she was nowhere to be found. So
yeah, and then when she came back in, she explained she'd been looking at like my imaging and all that good stuff, and like looking at the myelogram, just making sure she didn't see anything that looked, you know, kind of off or anything. So I was like, well, okay, that makes a little more sense. Had me stand up. That was okay. And she kept looking concerned, and I'm just like, okay, I'm not getting this. And then she didn't want me to look at the monitor, but the monitor's right here. Monitor's right here. I'm supposed to be staring straight ahead here, not turning my neck, because
you can't help but look at the numbers if they're right there.
They're right there. And she's like, don't look. And I'm just like, I'm trying not to look, but how can you not look at this? And then finally she's like, well, let's go on a walk. I said, okay. So we went on a walk. The actual monitor device, when it's not plugged in, it loses battery charge like that. I mean, it's very, very fast. Like downstairs, whenever I was in what they call the PACU, I could go to the restroom and come straight back, and it was gone, like had gone black before I ever went back to my room. And I mean, that would be less than like 3 or 4 minutes. And so I was like, yeah, this battery didn't last very long. She's like, I know. And then she started moving stuff, and the cord's attached to my head right here. And I was like, oh yeah, it's plugged in. She's like, I know. And I'm going, she's like, I only do like,
5 or 6
a week. And I was like, okay, I promise I'm not trying to tell you how to do your job. She's like, oh, I know, but, and then I was like, I'm just going to be quiet.
So, like all the other nurses that we've had to deal with all day, so this has been our experience all day, they're not used to all these wires, and some of them would miss some trying to do stuff. Yes. And so as it was pulling, they were appreciative whenever we were helpful, because, I mean, we've seen her get hooked and unhooked to these things multiple times by now. Yeah. And I mean, plus we're from the South, we're just like that. I mean, try to be helpful and do our own thing, but she was very condescending, and I mean, the way she was short and condescending, I did not like her at all. I mean, like I said, I know that we were already irritable just based on the situation, because hospital beds are not comfortable. She couldn't rest good, and having to lay flat without a pillow or anything, her neck and stuff. And so it was just a compound of things. And then, like I said, it being the end of the day, the doctor was probably tired and whatnot too. And so it's just a combination of things. It just was not a very good experience that evening. Yeah.
And then we went on our walk, and we made 2 or 3 laps. I don't remember.
I think 3.
And because she told me it needed to be 3. And she was like, are you anxious? And I was like, well, yeah, I'm anxious. I was like, it's been a long day. I mean, the bed's not that comfortable. And I mean, I said, just not knowing is a thing for me, it just makes me worry. And she was like, well, just go with the flow. And I'm like, well, that's easy to say. It's harder for me to do. And I tried to get her to understand that, some of this could be, just from me being, my anxiety being heightened and everything. And we got back to the room, and she stepped out for a few minutes. I was still sitting up again, and she came back in, and as soon as she left the room, like my heart rate dropped. My pressure numbers got a lot better, and I was like, that's interesting. And he was like, yeah, he's like, your numbers look great without her in here. And so she came back in, and I was like, just so you know, I was like, my numbers looked a lot better when you walked out that door. And I was like, nothing against you. I was like, it's just, I was like, I think anxiety is playing a role. She's like, do you have trouble with anxiety? I was like, not typically. I was like, but I do worry about things. I was like, and this whole experience, not knowing, being in the hospital, all this, I was like, that's kind of got me, you know, a little heightened. And so she, I think, kind of felt a little bit more like that. And then she was like, well, maybe you're a little dehydrated too, because she did not like my heart rate, because it was hitting over 100 like every time I'd stand up or move. My pressure numbers were much lower than she wanted, even though they were technically still fine. She
they
just
were within normal. They were just low normal,
and they were lower than they had been the day before. And so she was like, I think you need another night. And I was like, oh. And then she was like, you know, what's wrong with that? Why would you do in a hotel that you wouldn't do here? I was like, sleep. Like, I could actually sleep. So lying flat on this mattress, I don't sleep. I was like, if you need another night of monitoring for more results, I'm more than willing to do that. I was like, I want this to be done right, and I want it to be good. But she kind of kept harping on the fact that I wanted to leave and couldn't understand why I didn't. And I'm like, no, it's fine. It is really fine. I just...
Because she kept asking, like, what would you like to do? And she's like, well, I mean, everybody has a preference. I'd be like, I'd prefer not to be here, but I'll do what I need to do
yes,
to get this done. And she just kept on, like, it was just like the weirdest thing that she didn't want to stay in a hospital bed all night. I'm just like, I want to be like, well, how about you roll another one in here and you spend the night with her, and then you can really monitor. But yeah, I didn't say anything.
So we finally got through that conversation, at least, and she went out and talked to my doctor, and she was like, yeah, he agrees we probably need another night. She's like, but I will... At first she had told me that she'd come back at like 1 or 2 in the afternoon.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, wow, okay.
And we have to have these results to know what the surgery plan for Monday at 5:30 is.
Mm-hmm.
And if our doctor goes home, yeah, he would have still called after hours, but he needs to have time to decide what he wants to do once he gets these results. Yes. And so it's just like, what in the world?
And then at that point, she'd already mentioned dysautonomia to me. She hadn't really mentioned POTS, but I was like, dysautonomia is one of those things that I'd heard that could be a derail for surgery. And I'm like, okay, this is not good. And
the criteria numbers that she was quoting, though, was for POTS. So essentially she was using those numbers as a criteria without actually saying what the word was.
And that's what I had been most worried about this entire time, was getting one of those diagnoses and not getting to have the surgery that could potentially correct the structural problems just because these other numbers were off. And then I was like, if my anxiety is making this
and so
off
that
like
shot
that,
her through the roof.
Yeah.
After that, she was even worse after she started worried about that. I'm like, you're gonna have to calm down. And it was almost to the point that I was like, we may have to tell this doctor that we're furious with her, and that's why your stuff is so bad. Because we didn't want to say that, because I mean, we didn't want her to think badly. Because I mean, everybody spoke highly of her that was here. And she's very knowledgeable, but her bedside manner initially just was not that great. And I was like, if it's going to determine whether they cut off your surgery just because your numbers are off because you're so angry right now, we may have to tell her or tell your surgeon that the reason is because she's furious at the way this has gone down, that we didn't see her at all yesterday. We find out that the program they're using is not even the right one, so she clearly hasn't even looked at the data before she came in here. And she also said she hadn't looked at any of your stuff because she likes to start with a blank slate. And so it's just like, you know nothing of the last 10 11 years of stuff she's been dealing with, and then want to make a judgment just based on this. And so finally we thought about the Fitbit.
Yes.
And this saved the whole thing, I think.
Yeah, because she was like, do you wear a Fitbit or anything? I was like, yes, I do, actually. And she was like, well, how does it normally read? And I was like, I'm anywhere between 60 and 90. I said 90 tops on my, busiest days when I'm on my feet, bending over, lifting, pushing, pulling, all the crazy things I do at work. Because she was just floored that I didn't have any symptoms. But I mean, here's the deal. We've been away from home for a while. It had been a while since we traveled. So my symptoms only flare, like the most dramatically, at least, whenever I'm at home, you know, doing normal things or traveling where there's a lot of pressure and all that other stuff. But then I pulled up my app and he helped me find where like the heart rate changes were, like what my resting was, and then like the zones. They have like moderate, vigorous, and then something else. Yeah. And it showed like in the last month, I'd only been in the moderate zone for so many minutes, and then even higher than that, even less.
Yeah, I pulled it up for the last 3 months whenever I showed it to her, and it did an average, and she was in the moderate zone on her heart rate, an average of 3 minutes per day.
Yeah.
And then whatever the level was above that, it was 9 minutes the whole time. Yeah. And so, and she only wears her Fitbit stuff whenever she's at work and all that. So it's getting all that. And so I'm like, if she's only averaging 3 minutes per day for each day for the last 3 months, I mean, something should have ticked if this was like something happening all the time. And then she understood after that. And I think that's what saved her from worrying so much about that, and just realized it was anxiety.
Yeah. So she said, she's like, that actually makes me feel better. She said, that makes some sense. She's like, I'm really thinking that you may be like very dehydrated right now. She said, because dehydration can affect your heart rate. It can affect your pressure. She's like, so here's what we need to do. She said, another night of monitoring. She's like, I know it's not ideal, but let's do this. Her tone had changed too. And she's like, and I will come in about 8 o'clock in the morning and we'll do the testing. She said, normally I'll wait. She's like, but if I pump fluids in you all night, she's like, as you're, you know, doing this overnight monitoring, so I get more numbers, she's like, then in the morning, she's like, I think we can have a good test and hopefully, you know, we'll be able to get you in and out. I was like, sounds fabulous.
So at that time she changed that she'd be there at 8 o'clock.
Yes.
And plus, I also wonder too if the talk with the surgeon didn't help.
Yeah.
Because initially she was like, what are you expecting to get out of this thing? And we're like, we don't really know, because he doesn't know. He's just trying to figure out what he's going to do. And so maybe after she talked to him, she's like, I'm going to talk to him to figure out what exactly he's wanting. And I think after she talked to him and maybe realized he was trying to figure out, is it high pressure or low pressure, that she had more of an idea of what was going on too. And so, and plus I think the fact that he was probably wanting the results a little quicker is what made her come in at 8 instead of 1.
Yes. So that meant I had to stay another night, had to lay flat again for 8 hours, which was a little more difficult this time because I hadn't had anesthesia in my system to make me sleepy. I'd had more than 4 hours of sleep the night before, and I was getting fluids, so that obviously meant I had to get up a little bit more to go to the restroom, which was fine. My the nurse that night was fabulous. She was really great.
You've had nothing but good nurses here.
But she was like every time I pushed the button, she'd be within like a minute, which was, I mean, I'm not the only patient there, so I don't expect them there that quick, but she was really fast. But she came in, you know, helped me take all my paraphernalia with me, because obviously I had an IV added to the other stuff that had to go. Yeah. And so did my 8 hours. I only slept for probably 3 or 4 of that, but you know, I just laid as still as I could when I was awake, other than trying to take pressure off my back, because the way that mattress distributed, I don't know, it wasn't great. But as soon as 5:45 hit, the on-call doctor for neurosurgery, she came by and she's like, how are you? And starts asking me questions. She's really sweet, but I'm just like, can you not wait 15 more minutes? Because I was actually sleeping. But at that point I was like, you know what? I'm getting up. I'm getting in a chair. I'm not going to let these numbers define me today. It's going to be fine. I prayed about it for like 20 minutes before I even did that, because I waited a few minutes after 6 to actually get up. And went to the restroom and everything, got myself in the chair with the help of my nurse, and she started giving me I had to have antibiotics because that was like a thing, I guess, to prevent infections. And then I ordered my breakfast and sat there and prayed some more for calm, because obviously I needed it. And then he came in and we sat and talked a while, and he's like, don't get riled up. don't try to help. Don't try to do anything. He's like, just let her do her thing. He's like, it's going to be fine. And she walks in, big old smile on her face. Very, very sweet. Completely different than the day before.
It was like a whole new person.
Yes.
And like I said, I don't want to put it all on her. I think that it was a combination. I think maybe she was tired, maybe a little shorter the evening before. And then I know we were tired and a little irritable based on everything that happened. And so a very good experience the next morning. So we could actually see what everybody else saw in her.
Yes.
And all the good things that they said about her. And I'm just like, so that's where we had to make sure that we didn't base our whole impression of her based on our first impression. Because it was not very good. And like I said, it went a lot better. And then plus the night after she left, I looked up how to do the test because she's already hooked up to all these monitors and stuff. I looked up some of the tests to do. It wasn't 100%. And so it's like where you lay flat for so long and then get up and do it. And I checked all of her numbers, and her numbers were great without her in there. And so I explained that the next day too, and told her like the time we did it so that she could look at the data on the thing, but she didn't.
Smart car.
But I told her about the test we did, and it all went great. And she was like appreciative somewhat, but she didn't. I don't know that she ever bothered with looking, because I think that after the next day, the same thing didn't happen, and so she got past that. Yeah, so
I was already up whenever she got in there, and she was like, "Great, you're already up." She was like, "Well, let's start with the sitting stuff and standing." She's like, "And we'll finish with the other stuff." I said, "Okay." We walked like 6 laps out there. And she actually talked through like the numbers and what concerned her, what didn't. And she and I kind of came to the conclusion that maybe it was like a white coat thing. Well, you know, when you're in a doctor's office, hospital, you know, raises your blood pressure, heart rate, all that, just seeing, you know, the doctor come in or whatever. And she's like, I kind of get it. And she, you know, very personable. He walked with us. We all talked about everything. She's like, your numbers aren't bad. She's like, they're really not bad. She said, I was just expecting, based on what I'd been hearing, that I was coming in to see a high pressure. She's like, so this is completely the opposite of what I was expecting, because all of my numbers were either very, very low positives or negatives, but not so negative, or that stayed so negative that she was like, yeah, this is horrible.
Yeah, you had very few that hit the alarm.
Yeah, and so she's like, every time I was standing though, she was like, your heart rate's still a little higher than I would like. She's like, but based on the fact that you're not having that at home, she's like, I would just keep an eye on it. She said, if you notice a problem, she said, see a cardiologist. She's like, but we're not going to count that against you for anything here. And I was like, thank you. And then we went in and, no, we stood and monitored some more, because we had to disconnect from the monitor while it was plugged into a wall. And then after a few more laps, she's like, based on what I'm seeing, she's like, it does not look like this is a Chiari related like disturbance or pressure shift. She said, because if you were, you know, bending over, straining, turning your head side to side, and it was like a Chiari obstruction, she said it would be shooting up to like 40 or something like that. She said, you're not even going up 10 points whenever you do any of those activities. She's like, so she said, maybe the other procedure. She's like, but I don't think you need more decompression, because it looks like it's decompressed enough. And then he happened to talk to her and was like, yeah, they keep saying every time they look at her imaging that she's got a lot of space back there. And she's like, yeah, she said, you do have a lot of space there. She's like, I was looking at that. And she said, and I was like, well, could that cause anything, since there's, you know, all that space for CSF? And she said, actually, that could be a very reasonable explanation for lower numbers. She's like, because if it's got more there, then, you know, it just keeps like draining it basically, and you don't have as much as, or your brain doesn't think it has as much because it's all pooling back there. So she was like, yeah, she's like, that's very possible. But like I said, she just sat there and talked and was so nice.
She spent a lot of time there that morning.
And then she came in the room and she talked with us some more, asked if we had any more questions or anything. And she's like, as far as I'm concerned, she said, we can unhook you from all this stuff. She's like, I think my stuff's done. I'm going to talk to your neurosurgeon. And she's like, you should be able to get out of here pretty soon. And then she was just so friendly and like so happy I got to meet you guys. And she's like, if y'all have any questions, just call your neurosurgeon's office and they can get in touch with me and I'll give you a call. I mean, it was great.
Yes.
Wonderful experience. And then I was able to unhook from everything. So that was really, really nice.
Yeah.
The first time I was able to walk around the room and didn't have all the stuff connected to me, I just felt like completely free. It was
Pinocchio.
Yeah. No strings. But yeah, it was great. And shortly after that, they were like, well, we're going to start unhooking you from stuff because they're going to be coming to remove that bolt soon. It's like, okay. So we had to wait on, he had said it was going to be one of his chief residents that was going to come remove it. And I'd heard, it's not that painful, it's not that hard, anything like that. Well, she came in and she was like, there's going to be a lot of pressure. I was like, okay, I can handle that. That was unlike any experience I have ever had in my entire life.
So this is what it's like. They have her cover her eyes and they put like a tin of towels over her just to keep everything out. And it's basically a bolt with a wing nut. And we'll insert a picture. We're going to turn it to black and white just so you don't see anything else. But so you can see what came out of her head. But she's like on top of her, like cranking on this thing. Like it is like, I'm just like, that's hurting me. And it's not even happening to me. So I can imagine, I could tell by her body language that she was in pain.
My hands were like this.
Yes. And you were shaking just a little bit. But it was just crazy that whenever she pulled out and I actually saw what it was, I was just like, that was in your head.
Well, and she's having to do that, and she's like, hold your head very, very still. And I'm having to fight to keep my head pointing, straight ahead and not turning as she's cranking on it. So immediately after that, I could feel this entire side of my neck down to my arm. I was like, well, there's my symptoms. I mean,
but the monitor's not in anymore.
Yeah. But she was like, oh yeah, that went great. And she, as soon as she got it out, she's like, okay, now there's a possibility. She's like, this stitch that is in there waiting for me to tie, she's like, it's a dissolvable stitch. She said, so it's been there a few days, so it could break and I could have to redo it. And I'm sitting there praying, please, please, please don't let this thing break.
Yeah, because they didn't put anything to deaden it because they said that the way that the bolt is, that it would not actually work for that. And so... And they were like, most of the pain with the stitching is from actually doing the stitching. So since it was already there, they was like, there'll be some pressure of tying it. But
yeah, it was more the pressure. Whenever she was removing it, it's more the pressure and the noise, and the feel, because I've never felt anything like that in my entire life. But like the stitching, yes, there was some pain as she was pulling, and I was like, that's superficial nerves. It'll be okay. It'll be gone once she's done. And it's still very tender, I will say. I have a lovely bandage on top, which had to cover today because I'm not allowed to wash my hair for a little bit longer. But thankfully, it's out. It's not a problem now. And nurse came in and she was like, how was that? And I said, horrible. And I explained it to her, and then she looked at it and she was like, oh my word. She's like, that just hurts me. She said, just thinking about that. And she was like, how did it feel? So I described it to her and she was just like, yeah. And she started getting my discharge stuff ready, and she's like, they may bring you lunch and all that. She said, we'll work around all that. So she gets my discharge paperwork. They bring my lunch, and we're like, well, great. I guess the doctor's going to call us. We probably won't get to see him. Guess who walks through the door as she starts opening the discharge instructions? My doctor and the lovely PA that I've been talking to for months now. Which I was really excited to see her because I haven't seen her since my initial appointment, but I've talked to her multiple times. But he waited for her to get done with the discharge instructions. And then as soon as she walked out, he's like, okay. So he started going over everything. And he said exactly what the neurologist had said, he's like, we don't need to do any more decompression because obviously you're decompressed enough. And then he pulled up on the computer and showed me images of the back of my head, brain, skull. And he was like, this right here, which there's, if I can find a picture, I will put it in here. I don't know if I can find it or not. But there's a lot of space for fluid. And you can tell that my skull stops very high compared to the normal person's because of how much bone was removed on the previous surgery. And he was like, so part of your issue could be the fact that you've got so much here. He said, all these tests have been run with you laying down. He said, what happens when you sit up? He said, that could be that little pocket of fluid right there is just like bulging.
Yeah, sagging down kind of.
Yeah. And he said that he felt back there to see if he could feel anything. He's like, well, you're 2 years decompressed. He was like, so there's probably enough tissue there where it's not going to like feel squishy. He's like, but sometimes like right after, he said, it'll feel like kind of squishy because there's that extra pocket. And he said, the only thing that I would do, he said, would be I can put in a plate and we can see if that will not only support the cerebellum, which is what he'd originally told me. He said, but also it might kind of cut down on that amount of fluid that's there. And that way it would kind of shift your dynamics a little bit more and make it to where it actually drains like it's supposed to. And that may actually affect your pressures. He said, because he talked about how the pressures could be more negative and all that too. And he said, here's the thing though. He said, it's a 50-50 in my experience. He said, I'm just going to be honest. He said, 50% of the time it's better. 50% of the time it's not. He said, so I cannot guarantee that you're going to have, 100% relief or even, any relief from this. Mm-hmm. He was like, but structurally, he said, that's the only thing that I could see that could stand to be corrected. And he kind of, went through the risk factors of it because, it is a piece of hardware. It's going to be titanium, attached to my skull. He said, when he does have to remove tissue off of that area as he opens, he said it could tear the dura. You could have a leak. He said we might have to repair that. He said, there will be screws. They could come loose at some point.
He said most of the time, if it's going to be that, there would be scar tissue that would hold them in, so it's usually not a problem anyhow. But
yeah, he said, things can happen, with hardware. He said anytime you have hardware, something could go wrong. He said, or your body could, not, accept it. He said, I don't usually see that at all. He said, typically titanium is very well tolerated. He said, but he said, there are, risks to everything that we do. And so he was like, questions. At that point, I was like, I'm game. I was like, I said, as long as we've been dealing with this and, this is the best shot I have at actually having some improvement. Fixing the structure. It's reasonable to me. Kevin asked, he was like, so if this doesn't make her better, is it going to make her worse? Which is kind of like deja vu from the, very first surgery.
Yes.
Although we trust this doctor more. And he said, no, he said, I've never had anybody get worse instead of, just not better.
Yeah. He said, now it's going to be worse initially because you're going to have the neck pain, everything from all the surgery. But like once everything's healed, not worse. And he said the other thing is it'll also add some extra protection back there because like right now where she just has this gaping hole, there'll actually be a plate to protect it. Because I had to also ask like long-term restrictions. And if it fixes it, then he said there won't be that either. And so he said she'd actually be
less restricted.
Yeah, less restricted because it'd be safer back there. He goes, now I would never do it just for the added protection, but he said to fix that, he goes, it's just like an added bonus for it, is that you will have more protection because that big hole that's just open right now will actually have something across it.
So we were like, okay, yeah. And he was like, as much as she's been through with this whole thing, he was like, as long as it's not going to make her worse. And I said,
because that was my thing. I was like, as bad as I know how she feels at home whenever I see it, I was like, a 50-50 shot of this being fixed after years is well worth it in my book. It's ultimately her decision, but I knew where she stood too because we've talked about it way too much. And he had talked before about the plate not being 100% type thing, but like 50-50, that's still pretty good. right hand or left hand, you've got a pretty good shot of getting it right when you guess, or heads or tails. I mean,
yeah. And so they asked too, like, you know, what was different about me being in the hospital, why I wasn't having symptoms versus, you know, my day-to-day. And so I explained to him, you know, a lot of the things I do in a day, and his PA just started nodding, just like, yep. And he said, that actually makes even more sense as to, you know, why this explanation might be more, you know, plausible, is because, you know, with your activity, if you're constantly doing things that are, you know, making that just, you know, everything just pushed down right there.
Yeah.
He's like, then he said that absolutely actually makes even more sense. So he felt better about it too, even, I think. So questions I had for him at that point, or did you have something to add?
No, go ahead.
I was like, okay, so if we do that, I said, if we do this, like, so what am I looking at? And he said, well, go in Monday, which discharge on Friday. Come in Monday, same time, kind of same song and dance, you know, start super early, get there at 5:30, plan to start at 7:30. I don't know exactly. I didn't ask him how long it takes for the actual surgery.
I'm figuring it takes a while though.
But he said at least 2 days in the hospital, potentially 3. He said just really depends on, you know, how I'm doing, how it's managed and all that. He would do his little follow-up on this incision.
Yeah, because initially she's supposed to have a week out appointment on that. And so basically it'll be almost a week. Well, he'll be there sometime during that time afterwards too.
Yeah.
So.
And he's so good to come by and, you know, check on his patients.
Well, I mean, just like the one that he came even when he had no information. I mean, just to check up. I mean, just to be there. Wonderful. I mean, it was nice.
And he said that, you know, depending on it would be either Wednesday or Thursday before I discharge. And I was like, so how long after do I need to plan for us to be able to go home? And, you know, like, do I need to follow up the next week or anything? And he said, no, with this, he said, since we're not actually cutting into the dura, we don't think. He said, then we're planning on not having to have a follow-up initially, at least. He said, like a month, but not immediately. Yeah. And he said, as long as you're feeling fine, he said, 2 days after you discharge from the hospital, you can go home.
Yeah, because he basically said it's when she could bear it. And he said usually a couple days after that would be fine. And so with any luck, we'll be going home early. We're not going to say anything to the girls yet. No. This will come out after that. And so we'll be able to surprise them by not being gone so long.
Yeah. So
she will have a lot of restrictions initially after the surgery for a couple of months. Lifting, bending, and all that mess.
Yeah.
But the other thing was, like I said, he did say, I mean, there is a possibility when he goes in there that there could be some small leak or something that they just couldn't see before, which he can fix while he's in there if it's up in this area. And that might delay us where we're here longer. But as long as nothing gets like into that brain pocket stuff, then we should be good to go.
Yeah.
And he also has a plan if by some chance that this doesn't work. Their initial guess was low pressure. And so we've gone full circle. But we're back to their initial thought about this was correct. I mean, that just goes, that also goes to show their experience.
Yes.
That even though we got to a point where we weren't sure that's what it was, we got back to they were initially correct. It's just, it wasn't a leak. It's just this. But it is possible that it's could potentially still be a leak somewhere that's like an exertion. I don't know how you would actually call it, but where it's like not all the time, but like whenever you do stuff, it
spontaneous.
That's
what it's called.
Okay.
I forgot.
And so he did say that if this plate doesn't work, let it get healed up from that. If you're still having issues now that we've done the ICP, that they should be able to get their radiologist, interventional radiologist.
Yes.
They should be able to talk to their interventional radiologist, show him these numbers, and then get him to do like a universal patch.
Yeah.
Initially, they didn't do that because her pressure was so high that they thought it'd make it worse, but we don't really know what the fluke was.
Well, I do though, because after I got to reading, anxiety can create high pressures, and the doctor actually came and sat with me for probably 15 minutes before I went back, because I was so anxious about, you know, oh, the malarium's gonna hurt, it's gonna hurt, you know, I was worried about the whole scenario because we didn't know where we were going from there. but he's like, you're really anxious. So I probably needed something for anxiety before I had that, honestly, because my numbers probably would have been more truthful.
Okay.
But that was one thing I'd read not too long ago, and I was like, well, okay. Apparently I was way more anxious than I thought I was too.
Yeah. So either way, we have an answer that we hope fixes it, but if not, we have the next step already in place, and hopefully between this or that, we'll get you fixed up.
Yeah, just it was crazy. As soon as we got done with our conversation and he's like, okay, we'll see y'all next week, have a good weekend, try to rest, you know, all this, it just felt like a weight had been lifted.
Yes.
And I mean, I'm sitting here like smiling ear to ear about the fact that I'm having surgery on Monday, but it's just the relief of knowing that there's a solid plan and an explanation where even if it's not 100% the deal, I mean, at least we're closer, and I mean, structurally it'll at least be better. Yes. So I mean, I feel better about everything now. And also, we had not booked a hotel he had to check out that morning before he came up there to the hospital. So he had to gather all the stuff, super early by himself. And we're still sitting here without a hotel, which was kind of crazy. But we also didn't want to book something for, a week and a half, not knowing what he was going to do.
Yeah, the fact if something would have popped up in this testing that would have changed everything, we didn't want to waste our money on something that we couldn't cancel. So we just didn't book, and I was like, there's plenty of hotels around, we'll find something. Yeah,
so he started looking really fast. My lunch was there, and he's like, you eat, I'll look. So I was eating, and then I pulled up my stuff, and he found a really cute little Airbnb super close to the hospital.
1 block,
and it has a free parking space, and it looks like it'll be great for recovery and all that too. But it didn't start that day because it was going to be way more expensive. I guess same day bookings.
No, they didn't have it. It wasn't available.
Oh, this one wasn't available. Okay.
Correct.
So, we found a hotel with good reviews out by the airport, and we're like, you know what? It's fine because can't check in till late anyway. We can go eat, just chill. And hotel turned out super nice. I mean,
it was a nice hotel, and it was cheap.
It was cheap and very comfortable, huge space, and clean, all the things that you need in a hotel. And we've just been chilling. So it's
it was
really
nice. I laid down on the bed and was watching TV, and I passed out. She woke me up at like 8:45. She's like, do you want supper? I was like, no. But we ordered, she was hungry, so we ordered her supper in, but I wanted to sleep. Yeah.
But finally, today's finally the day that I get to wash my hair with baby shampoo, but still I get to wash my hair. So I'm actually kind of excited about that because I'm not one who doesn't wash my hair. Plus every day. Plus he has all this iodine in it, so it's really sticky right now, and just kind of feels gross. But I'm gonna be really excited. I feel like a brand new person once I finally get it all done. Yep.
So we're fixing to go in here, and I'm going to wash her hair, and that's where we're gonna end it. So we'll catch you next time on Grounds Family Farm. Bye.
Bye, guys.